Okay, we're going to talk about in today's video on how to actually target Facebook group members with a Facebook ad, and the specific process that you can do that a lot of people don't know about, which actually does make a lot of money and a lot of people are actually after. I'm actually going to talk about kind of the old way that, the old loophole that people used to use, and then there's now an even better loophole that I'm going to be able to share with you on the video. Actually, both loopholes I'm going to share with you about on this video about how to make money targeting people in a group, as well as some ads that work for targeting group members that I've actually ran and also had made money with as well. So this is a new way to target Facebook group members with a specialized ad, which a lot of people don't even know they can do in the first place, because Facebook does not let you, like LinkedIn, target group members, outright. And so you can understand how to do that, though, what the workaround is for that and how to make money with it once you actually understand the process. So anyway, as usual in my videos, I'm going to go through a quick background here before I get into the how to do this strategy and then the results that you can kind of expect with it. But it'll just take, so we'll run through that right quick. For a long time, people thought that they had to target someone who's in a Facebook group by doing placement of organic content in that group, i.e. like a 10-second video to get them into a remarketing audience. So, they would have a special, so in other words, what the initial old workaround that I mentioned before was they would, to target people that are in a group, any group, they would actually have a piece of content that they would share, namely a video, because it works the best that way. They would share a video in that group, and then they would hope that people would actually be able to watch that video, right? And it's on autoplay, so automatically if they're scrolling past it, they would see it, right? And then with that, if the video played at least 25% of the video, which is the minimum for this to work, then they could be put on a special list, a remarketing list, of which you set up a specific video just for this task. That's about 10 seconds long. You share that video. If they watch at least 25% of that video, now inside your Facebook targeting settings, when you set up that campaign to follow all this, you could say anybody who's watched this particular video at least 25% of the way through, I want to be able to have my ad just show up for those people. So you can kind of see how this works. So a shorter video makes sense because obviously if it's a 10-second video and they're not on that, within the video being on their viewable screen for more than 2.5 seconds, then they won't be able to be on that audience. So the shorter the video, the better. Technically, a 5-second video would be better, so it only has to show up for like a second. So you get the idea. Well, it starts to get a little weird when you have a 3-second video. You get the idea. So you could balance different kind of objectives and different configurations there. But that was the general gist of it. Again, you have to have a dedicated video so that later on, when you want to target people in this group, to single them out specifically, then you need to have a dedicated video for this task. I should have just mentioned dedicated dedicated content, dedicated video, not dedicated content and landing page, because that landing page part isn't actually required. But you get the general idea here. Now, what are the drawbacks with this? Why aren't we just still doing this? Well, one, it's obviously kind of sketchy, right, for some people, but more so, the thing that sucks and why people want to actually run advertising to a group member is if you share something in a group, it won't be seen by probably only 10 to 20% of the people. It depends on your reach there. It will depend on your authority in that group already. So if you're active sharing a lot in that group, you will get seen more than if you're just posting 1 or 2 times and then that's it. And when you post, do a lot of people like it and share it and that kind of thing? Because Facebook's ultimately going for how to keep people on the Facebook app or site as long as possible. So if you're sharing garbage content, they'll want to show someone else's content, so people get a satisfied have a satisfied experience when they're in that group on a regular basis. So the just like the news feed, they're constantly optimizing what content that you will see based upon how that content's performed before on other people's feeds. But in this case, you have your own user score, if you will. Facebook, through everybody else's news feeds, are the same way. If you share crappy content that nobody likes or cares about, well, you'll have less reach on that individual content, but also just in general. So with the group, you have to like spend time engaging with the group in order to, when you place this video ad, that it gets seen by more than like 10% of the people. So, but the best case scenario, given that there's just, obviously everybody in that group, some people go there every day, some people go once a week. The average user is not going to be going there multiple times a week. If the average user, there'll be some power users, some not. So if you have 1,000 group members you want to target, and even if you do show up 100% of the time to everybody in that group, right, there'll be maybe half of them that will just never see it, because it's only going to show up some, or half, or should I say less than half, assuming that you would, in other words, you have enough high enough reputation to get 100% impression share of, in other words, how often your ad shows. Will it show to every eligible person? You're still only going to get 30% of the video ad that you have then popped up for that user, or for that video, I should say, that's supposed to pop up for the user. Less than half of the people will see it, because respectively, people don't, most of the people that are in that group just aren't going to be able to go and visit that group again within a reasonable or effective amount of time that it will actually be eligible to show up for somebody. Even if the content is good, you go to the group, it was shared a month ago, it will probably not pop up for that user after they log in a month, because the algorithm that determines what's seen in the group by the group members will favor newer content, even not just the most engaged content. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule, but you get the general idea. It's just bottom line, uncertain whether or not someone's going to see it. Are they actually going to, do they go to the group very often? Of that, I have to put work in to make sure my stuff's seen in the first place. And even if it is seen in the first place, still I can't expect everybody to see it 100%, because it's very difficult to have the reputation, one, to make sure it gets seen, but also have content that's good enough to make sure it's seen. And on top of that, before I wrap this up, if you have a 10-second video that's supposed to be short so that everybody sees it, so that you have the maximum people that can get on your remarketing list to advertise to them, well, at the same time, that content's probably pretty difficult to be good enough to get the reputation of and the metrics of high like rate, high share rate to actually be shown to everybody also. So you get the general gist of this. This is a very unpredictable thing, and you still have a lot of work to make sure you're shown. You may not. And then what a lot of people end up doing is not have to do one video, but they'll have to, over time, do one video and then another and another and another. And it might take you 3 months of sharing a video, one a week. You've shared 15 videos to get 60% or so of the people in that group on your remarketing list, something like that. Okay, so, but it's better than nothing. Now, there's a better way to go about doing this. Now people are starting to realize you can do the same thing without all of that, just by creating a customized or custom audience for yourself. Custom audience being, that's the term for something, people normally know those as, or use those as if you want to target an email list or phone number list of people that have certain cell phone, if you collected user cell phone numbers, you could use a custom audience, put all their phone numbers in there, and now you could target a specific list of people as long as you know their phone numbers. Same thing can be done with email addresses, but we're going to be able to use the custom audiences for this to create our own custom audience that's full of these group members, so we could target them as our workaround. So anyway, here's how to actually do it that works, okay? So first you get invited to the group, obviously, and then you're going to know all group members. In each group, just like on a Facebook fan page, or business page if you want to call it that now, is what it's called now actually, you can actually show all the group members so that you can, obviously be able to contact people, but that's going to be their weakness that you're going to exploit. You can see all the members now, right? And obviously if you message too many people on Facebook, they flag you. So an ad isn't the only way to really be able to make sure everybody in your group sees what you want them to see. Then you make note of all the group members, write them down. Second, then you move on to go to each member's page, group member's page, and then right-click on the profile image of the user to reveal their user ID. So I think it's like a 6 to 8 digit number. I can't remember the exact format, but something like that. But you'll know how to. You'll see it. It'll say user ID next to the ID, so you'll know when you can find it there. But within that, or with that, now you have a identifiable piece of information that you can use to advertise to the person once you've completed the rest of the steps of this technique, which is, of course, now using that user ID, you next will need to create a custom audience from the user IDs that you created and found from the previous step. So you take the user ID, you have to go one by one, right-click on the user's profile image, get the user ID, write it down in a spreadsheet or something, go to the next person, do it again, do it again, do it again, until you've got them all. Now you copy that whole list of user IDs in a raw format, put it into a spreadsheet, and then you upload that spreadsheet to Facebook within the, after you've create new custom audience within the custom audience menu. And now, once you saved it, you get a 100% match rate because it's Facebook's own system for identifying users, that now you can be, you're in a position to have an audience that you could target with an ad that is full of just the group members by itself. And so the last step being, now you advertise. Now you got to have specific advertisements that work, and I'll talk about the type of advertisements that work for me, that made money in the past for me, and then for different companies as well. So you can find what ultimately should be able to get you started making money with this method right away, right out the gate. So you walk away with this video with an actual money-making strategy in hand. As for the group members, the user IDs, you got to have 100 of them on your list. So if you have a really small group, you're not going to be able to do it. And if you, the kind of black hat workaround for that is you go find, if you have 60 user IDs for 60 group members, you find 40 more user IDs of random users, and you put that in there. And that way, it's less efficient now. But I would go find 40 user IDs for people who look like they haven't logged in at least a year. That way, when you advertise to them, they're not going to muddy up your data, right? You're still going to pay to advertise to them because, yes, it's pay-per-click, but if you don't get a high click-through rate, your cost per click goes up. So effectively, you're paying per 1,000 times it shows. That's how all advertising on the web works, whether they call it pay-per-click or not. A lot of people don't really know that or think about that, but that's certainly the case. So you're handicapping yourself, for the 40 on there that you have to use to trip the 100 user, threshold, and so you'll pay a little bit more. But for the most part, this is so effective, i.e., or so profitable for you to be able to actually know and say you're just targeting group members and you know exactly what group they're in, that it all makes up for it anyway. Even if you had 20 group members, that's effective enough. So, but anyway, I just wanted to point that out, throw that in there as well, in case you came up, in case it came up. And respectively, I'm going to start off by targeting one group, and then if it works, instead of just adding all of the group members of the targeted groups, I'm going to make a custom audience for every single individual group, because there's going to be some groups that will work, some not, or they'll all work, but they'll all work at a different rate or pace. Not only that, each group will be a different size. So there's a thing called ad fatigue, and if you keep showing the same ad that's worked before to the user, the more times they see it, up past a certain threshold, which is about 7 times, roughly speaking, it'll start, the performance will start to fall off, and you got to be able to taper your ads for that. And so you have a more control to do that if you have a separate campaign for every group and every custom audience which represents each group than if you were to combine them all together and try to, optimize and have your ad work in that once everybody has seen it, the ad that you have at least 7 times, they stop, you shut your campaign off. You can do that, but if you do it, again, if you combine all the groups, the user IDs into one list, you'll shut, if you're with, they call it the ad frequency. If you adjust your columns in your Facebook reporting, or just look at the campaign, and you see, you're trying to, you just start, stick with the default kind of way that people do this. Once you see the frequency hit 7, you pause the ads, because the performance then goes down after that, at least by having the same ad. Or just what most people will do is come out with another ad to keep things fresh and keep the performance up, have a think of another angle. You're going to do that or whatever, then respectively, there'll be some people in some groups that don't go to, aren't on Facebook as often. So if you combine everything, maybe there'll be some group members from some groups that got hit hard, but then you never had an opportunity to advertise to some other group members, which you should, and the group list would have added to the amount of profit you can make, but now isn't, because you combined everything together. So hopefully I explained that right. But so keep it separate. Not only that, you can actually have custom messages for every single person in every single group. You can actually say, hey, Sowers Unite group member, Well, this is a method that actually works in a lot of different other forms of marketing. If you can get a list of magazine subscribers, and you start off the letter or email that you sent to them, hello, former entrepreneur.com subscriber, gets their attention right away. It's actually a very effective way to do things. And so if we parlay that into the digital world, with what you can do to get, email lists, or in this case, Facebook audiences that we can actually make with just narrowed down lists of people in certain groups, we can communicate with people the same way and get a premium on what we could get with advertising our product or service, because now we're more relevant. Being more relevant is going to get the user's attention easier. You're going to have higher click-through rates, and then now our cost per conversion and cost per sale will go down. ROI goes up, which anything, respectively, if you have a good ad, but you don't have the ROI that you want, then what you should immediately be thinking of is, well, first, you knock out certain demographics that don't work quite as good, but think of a gimmick to put on your ad to be more relevant and narrow down your advertising more, combination thereof, so that your ad sounds more relevant to the user than it was before. The more relevant it seems to the user, the more likely they'll click, and then you could take, a 400% ROI that you had and now make it 1,000 because you narrowed it down and made your ad follow and mention something about the user that makes them fall into that group. That makes it, to where they'll actually, it'll catch their eye more. So it's not so much if they want to click more as it is when you're scrolling down the news feed and you're trying to decide, do I want to click on this or is it an ad? And when you're going down the list, when you see something that says you're an average group members, it looks a lot less like an ad, first of all. Because the first filter is that they're trying to do to see if they're going to click on something or not is it an ad? Ad, okay, skip. Ad, skip, or mentally, ignore. Ad, but you kind of trick them in that if the first thing you say is group members, it like hijacks the process a little bit. And not only that, you of course are if you've been in this one group, this is the main thing you do on Facebook, other than go through and look at your family photos. Of course, you do get an added, effect of this seeming like it's credible information that I need to pay attention to, since it's not just random information. I trust this group, therefore I trust this ad or content related to this ad. Okay, so you get the general gist. Now, as far as ads that you can use with this method, now you're being able to target certain group members. Here's what I use. Of course, LinkedIn has group members, so you can obviously use a variation of it there, but this is primarily I'm talking about for Facebook here in terms of the ads themselves and the angle in the ad. A lot of people don't think about how the angle in the ad can be changed. Again, they can be made to be more relevant, like I said, but there's a lot more you can do than just say, here's my product or service. Of course, that in itself a lot of times doesn't work. You need to find a way to seduce the user with information that doesn't seem like a pitch, and then you ease your way into that person's wallet or pocketbook by first earning their respect with something that they did want, and then immediately after you can then sell something to them once they've done looked at the content you've taken them to, and then of course pitch them then. I want to say more often than not, unless it's a cheaper product or service, you have to lead with information first. Like if it's less than $100, well, it's an impulse buy. You could just go right for the sale. So that's just a general rule of thumb. But anyway, the first thing, as far as ads that work for targeting group members, is a group member special. So it's just like it sounds. Special just for Sewers Unite group members. So they're thinking, it gets their attention, they pay attention to it, right? $100 off this month only. So you combine all that together. Special offer for Sewers Unite group members. $100 off anything in the store or this specific product. And you can get a 2 to 3 times increase in click-through rate by just having a $100 off ad, just to show you the potential of this and actually leading in with something about the group, specifically group member special or something close to thereof, okay? So again, click-through rate is directly tied to ROI in that the more clicks you get, most people that are good at Facebook ads know this, and so that's why they're always looking for higher click-through rates, that you can use something about the group there, given that and also because you could have, like I told you before, have a custom audience for each group that you have, so that your ad can say, group member, Sewers Unite group member special, and then for your group number 2, Sewers Lovers, Sewers Paradise group special, this month only. You get the point. So for each group, you'll have you'll just change the headline there slightly. And I would recommend a little look and feel of what the group looks like in terms of the header image, so that immediately registers that this is from this group, even though it's not technically. And so that gets your click-through rate up. And like I said, you can go from a 400% ROI to 1,000% ROI by breaking up, first of all, just targeting group members, because those people they're a lot more likely in general to buy because they're actually passionate about whatever it is they're doing, or they're in such I have to get information about this right now because I got to take this seriously what I'm doing than anything else, that it's good, but more so that you can have the ability to target people and communicate to them as per what language is used in the group to get your click-through rates up, so you can take a 400% ROI and make it 1,000% ROI by mentioning the group somewhere in there, specifically group member special. I can just tell you like a group member special, and then mention, with that, like I said, mentioning the group, and then $100 off or a discount, and this month only. That'll get you a 2 to 3 times click-through rate. I said it a little bit wrong. It's a 2 to 3 times click-through rate increase by saying group member special versus not having group member special. So it doesn't have to be $100 off. It could be anything, but if you're going to do it, I would just say generally what will work for you is to say $100 off this month only, group member special, and then the group name, all in the ad together, okay? But definitely if you take off the group member special part and mentioning the group itself, just $100 off, you're not going to get the increase in click-through rate. That's the one variable that gets the 2 to 3 times the click-through rate increase. And so if you don't have results now, consider narrowing down, making an audience for each group, and do an ad like I just mentioned, group member special, and you'd see 2 to 3 times increase in click-through rate, and then therefore 2 to 3 times increase in ROI, maybe get you over the threshold where you can make an acceptable profit from what you're doing with your Facebook ads or want to do with your Facebook ads. So anyway, you get the general idea now. The second kind of ad is that I've used here that's worked for targeting group members is to say recently shared in XYZ group or recently shared in Sower's Paradise. So I trust what's shared in Sower's Paradise, otherwise I wouldn't be going to that group. Obviously some people aren't going there a lot, but a lot are. So the 10 or 20% of power users in that group will see that and they'll click on your ad now at a super high rate. Enough to where you can overall get the click-through rate up on your ad 2 times higher than if you were to have an ad that didn't mention it, but didn't mention the group name, but still offered the same content. By default, something that I always will go to and use is a product or service. If it's a product, it's a product test. If it's a service, it's a service test. And I'm going to do a side-by-side test on my blog that tests the product against other products in that category. Also the niche or all my competitors' products against mine, and put it into an article, and then I will put recently shared in Sower's Paradise group. So basically, recently shared in Paradise Sower's group, and then side-by-side product tests of all sewing machines under $500. So that to get the user to go, it looks like content. People are in the group because they want to see content like this. They don't want to see buy my sewing machine garbage, commercial garbage. But if this is actually interesting information, and I buy sewing machines, or I buy maybe not a sewing machine because I have one, but a different sewing tool that I would consider using, and this actually shows which ones work and which doesn't work, because I might need that information in the future. So that's like a go-to that you can use that I found works on a regular basis. And again, just by saying, targeting the same people, but not using recently shared in XYZ group, you're getting half the click-through rate than if you did mention the group like that. Okay? So you get the general idea. The next one, the final one, is you mention a site that gets talked about a lot in this group. So in your group, you scan all the posts. Is there a specific site that keeps getting referred to more than anything else, or in the top, let's say, 3? In a particular group, if people are linking to Zero Hedge, which is a news website, and that's what people then are used to seeing and therefore trust seeing, because they click on it, they're routinely liking it, and then they're showing they're liking it because they're clicking thumbs up, which you should also check, not only what's getting shared a lot, but what's getting a lot of engagement. And then what you try to do is you go to that publication and you try to ask them for an interview from them. And obviously not everybody can do this, but if you can do that, then you can have an ad that says Zero Hedge interviews your company name. And then with that, you can have your ad show up for people that's in the group. So you're not mentioning the group name there specifically, but you're mentioning a site that they normally see in the group. So it's like group content, right? You could actually mention the group name there too, but respectively, you don't need to, because this is just content they're normally clicking on anytime anyway, and it's just making sure that group content effectively shows up in the regular old newsfeed, and you're going to be able to get their attention that way. But what's great about this method, you can actually make sales this way, because once they see the article, a lot of times they'll just go to your site. Obviously, a lot of people don't realize how guest articles on different sites make money. About 0.25% of the people who read the article will go to the site and purchase if it's a good article and you have a good product. I know because I write guest posts. And so you got that, but then also it sets you up for doing the follow-up advertising that goes right after it, of which you do, XYZ interviews or Zero Hedge interviews, then your company name, and you have a push to that article, and you've been interviewed, or instead of interview, it could just be product reviewed or service reviewed. Zero Hedge reviewed the product. Or a news site, they wouldn't review your product. So if it's just like a magazine, if they reviewed your product, an interview, review, the same thing. It's interchangeable. But you do that, XYZ Zero Hedge interviews company. Then right away after they've read that article, if they don't go directly to my site and buy or inquire, right after that I could follow it up with a group member special again. Sower's Paradise group member special, $100 off, and then with that, so you get them excited, to where they'll trust, your product already because they read the article, even though they're probably not then ready to make a purchase quite because they're not haven't gotten paid yet, or they're just not they want to go back to the group and keep reading because they're drinking their coffee, their morning coffee, whatever. But then right after that, you give them an urgent reason to buy now instead of delaying or procrastinating. And then you have $100 off this month only. And again, you mentioned the group, which is going to get you a high click-through rate in general because you mentioned the group there like I was talking about before. And that's an effective 1-2 punch that works very, very well. Okay, so the same thing, number 2, where you do a product test or a service test. If you run the group member special ad after that one, it's the same thing. But particularly in the situation where 3, if you could actually get an article on the site that the other people on the group already that they normally go to read content from that group, you'll get 1 to 2 times more effective ROI from your campaign that you run up here than if you just ran this number 1 by itself. It works. But if you can do this, when people go on later after they've clicked on this ad, when they click on this ad later on, it'll work 1 to 2 times better on top of however good it worked. So if you got an 8-to-1 ROI here, you could get potentially a 12-to-1 ROI if they first clicked on your initial ad here. So it's kind of like a buffer that gets people primed for the other ad, if you will. So anyway, some general ideas there of what you can do to make these campaigns work now that you know you can target group members all by themselves. Stuff that I've seen worked in the past. If you like this video, I have a lot of other videos on this particular channel about different money-making PPC strategies. You should check those out if you haven't already. I have a blog at guaranteeppc.com/blog, which has step-by-step instructions on how to build PPC campaigns that will guarantee your results like we do for our clients at our firm. It's interesting to look at as well. If you have any questions or comments about anything I covered here, leave me a comment down below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel or question, and I can get back to you within a day or two on anything that you think I should have covered and didn't. But I hope you enjoy the video. Hope this can make you money, and go ahead and try it out. Try to improve your Facebook campaigns going after group members. It really does work.